All right guys, welcome back to the channel. This is gonna be an extremely exciting video, way more exciting than the front bumper build. I have been wanting to get this rear bumper built for a long time. So in this video, we're gonna be building the rear bumper. This video is all thanks to Coastal Offroad. They were kind enough to actually send me their rear bumper. So huge shout out to them. If you guys are looking for any sort of off-road bumpers or sliders or skid plates, go check them out. And I'll link everything down in the description for them. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get the plastic rear bumper off. We're gonna go ahead and get everything prepped and ready, and then we're gonna head down to the shop, and then we're gonna go ahead and start building that rear bumper. Okay, so if you haven't watched my previous video, I did a bumper cut on the bottom of the truck. So there will be a series of about 4 to 6 screws at the bottom that you'll have to take out. So I don't have to take those off because I don't have them on the truck anymore. But once you take those off, you're gonna have these 10mm bolts along the back here. We're gonna take those out, and then we've got clips here. This clip here that I have actually popped out. But we've got another one here. We're gonna take those off. There's gonna be 2 more bolts. There's gonna be 1 more bolt on each side. We're gonna remove those and then remove the bumper off. All right, so we're gonna take out the series of 10mm bolts. All right. If you watch my previous videos, you know that I use zip ties along the sides here when I did the bumper cut. And then back up in here, there's gonna be 1 more bolt that you're gonna have to take out, and that bolt is right up here. So you're gonna take that out, and you're gonna do the same thing on the other side, and your bumper will slide off. All right, so we've got all the pins and clips removed. Now we're gonna go ahead and slide our bumper off. Let's do the same thing on this side. All right. And make sure that you don't damage anything on this plastic bumper because you will need it. All right, so we've got the bumper off. Now we're gonna head to the shop, do our last little bit of prep, and then start installing our new bumper. Okay, so we're in the shop, and the next thing we need to do is finish the rest of our prep work. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove our hitch here. I'm gonna remove these 2 bolts here, get this out of the way. This is the connection for our trailer lights. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and take this off, and then we're gonna go ahead and clean everything up underneath a little bit, and then we're gonna start actually welding. Okay, so we've got the hitch off, and I disconnected the area where the trailer lights plug in. So also for installation purposes, Coastal Offroad recommends that you disconnect your exhaust, just disconnecting the hanger. And I also disconnected it from the hanger back up under the truck too, just to be able to move that around. So now what we're gonna do is, one thing that they talk about in the instructions is sanding down sort of these like globby welds. So if you look under here, these welds around here, they say it's better to sand that stuff down just so that you can have a flatter surface. I've got this dent right here that kind of sticks down a little bit, so I may have to end up trying to bang that up a little bit, just depending. So now all that's done, so we're gonna go ahead and sand this stuff down underneath, make sure it's fresh and clean. Now per se, if you have a GX and if you have air suspension, I'm gonna skip that part because I don't have that, but Coastal Offroad does include in the instructions how to disconnect all of that so that you can install this rear bumper. And there's 2 brackets right here and right here that your plastic bumper will screw into. These need to be cut off as well. Another thing to keep in mind is you have your spare tire hoops right here. I don't have a spare tire underneath the truck anymore because my tires are just too big to fit up under the truck anyway, and that's the whole point we're going with the swing out bumper in the first place. So you can either cut these off or you can bang them down. I'm gonna show you why. So here's plate 1. If plate 1 contacts this tire hoop right here, like it's doing now, what you can do is you can just bang it down with a hammer, or you can cut it off. Because like I said, I'm not using these anymore. I'm gonna cut them off. I'm all about cutting stuff off. So this stuff is getting chopped. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut these off because we don't need them anymore. All right, now we should be able to mount the bumper on and have it line up without any issues whatsoever. So it's not contacting anything down here, which is the way that we want it. Okay, so all of our bumper prep is complete. Now it's recommended that you go ahead and mark all of your pieces that you need. I've got everything marked out here. It helps you figure out what's what. It saves you a bunch of time. So now that we got all that done, we're going to go ahead and start getting this bumper put together. Okay, so now it's time to start actually welding our first piece together. So we've got plate 1 here. This right here is technically the top, and this is technically the bottom. We've got our number 2 plates. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide our number 2 plates in this notch here. There should be a notch at the top of here, a notch at the top of there, and it'll just slide in there just like that, and it should sit in there in place. Now we're going to tack this in place, but we're also going to go ahead and completely weld it together, because while we have access to it, because it's going to be completely blocked off here in a little bit, so while you have access to it, go ahead and completely weld this side and this side together. We're going to do the same thing on the other side as well, and then once that's done, we're going to go ahead and bolt this plate to the truck. All right, now what we're gonna do is we're going to mount plate 1 that we just welded together, and we're gonna mount it on to the actual frame. Now we're gonna mount our 2 screws here, 2 here, and then there's 2 underneath it here. So we're gonna mount those 6 bolts in there. And I'm gonna let you know right now, if you're doing this by yourself, it's gonna suck. But we're gonna go ahead and get this mounted on here and then get our bolts in. Now you can let it sit here and rest for a second while you grab your bolt. And I'm not like wrenching these bolts down on here. I'm just getting it hand tight, just so that we can make sure that our bumper is on securely for the rest of the welding job. Okay, so now we're on the driver's side of the truck. Plate 4 is gonna go on the driver's side of the vehicle. And how we're gonna do it is we're gonna line it up, and we're gonna go ahead and bolt it in onto the truck. Okay, so something that I want to point out that is pretty imperative. You see how the bottom plate here of plate 1 is almost flush with the frame? That is extremely, extremely imperative, because if not, then the plates that we're installing here at the bottom, they won't line up correctly, and you could have a chance of that plate 1 sitting sort of crooked. So that's something that I noticed. I had a dent on that side of my bumper that I actually had to end up torching and banging out, because this plate 1 would not sit correctly. When they give you recommendations to sand stuff down, stuff like that, go ahead and do that, because that's imperative with your bumper sitting on the actual truck correctly. All right, so we've got plate 4 bolted up on here. This bolt actually on my truck, on the actual part that screws into the frame, completely broke out, so there's no way I can get anything screwed in there. But they give you an extra few mounting points on the truck to actually be able to mount your bumper. So if you have one that's snapped off or something like that, they kind of make it overkill so that you can make sure that your truck is secure. Okay, and like I said before, you're gonna have to disconnect your hanger for your bumper. So plate 3 is gonna have a hole in it. This hole right here is what you're going to have your hanger sit through. So when you go ahead and mount it up onto the truck, your hanger is gonna sit through that hole just like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this mounted up on here. All right, so we've got plate 3 bolted on. Now, something that they recommend that you can do is you can put some washers in here to kind of space it out, because like, as you can see, there's kind of that gap. And that's because this part of the frame is kind of like a step up from this part of the frame. This part of the frame is a little bit lower. So you're gonna kind of have this gap in here. And so to combat that, what they recommend is you could put some washers in there, close that gap and tighten it up. Same thing with the back as well. And another thing, before you weld everything together, you want to make sure that you have at least a 3/8 inch gap from the hatch to the rear bumper, because you don't want that bumper contacting, and also The bumper is gonna flex whenever you're working on the truck, so keep that in mind as well. So just make sure that the hatch does not touch the actual bumper. All right, now you just wanna make sure plates 1 and 4 are level, which they are. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and tack plate 1 and 4 together. Okay, so now that we've got plates 1 through 4 tacked together, we're going to tack on our number 5 plates. Now our number 5 plates are gonna sit just like this on the truck. Now you wanna make sure that they're level, that they're not crooked or wonky that way, and make sure that they're not contacting your back hatch here. So they're gonna sit on here just like this, and we're gonna make sure it's level, and then we're gonna tack this on, and then we're gonna do the same thing on the other side as well. All right, so I got this side tacked on as well. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish the weld here, just because I'm not sure if I'll be able to reach this side of it later on. All right, we've got plates 1 through 5 tacked onto the vehicle. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start working on the side wings. The important things are to make sure is that nothing contacts this rear hatch. You don't want anything hitting this rear hatch. To be honest, my gap at the bottom is a little close. It's within the acceptable range. Now, one of the things that they mention is if you're building out the side wings, you want it to follow the body with about a 1/4 inch to about a 1/2 inch gap along the side with the side wings. Now, because us 4th gen guys and even GX guys, our plastic bumper is gonna come down to about here. So we don't have to worry about that step. That step is gonna come for us later. But if you've got a different vehicle other than this and you're building the rear bumper, keep that in mind. You want about a 1/4 inch gap going along the side. So with all that being said, we're gonna go ahead and start working on our side wings and getting those finished up. Okay, so we're working on the side wings now. Something that Coastal Offroad mentions is they give you a recommended way to install these, or a recommended order, but you don't have to do it in that exact order. They give you certain spots you do need to pay attention to, but you don't have to do everything in that exact order. So their instructions say to tack plate 6 and 7 on, which 6 is gonna be this top piece here, and 7 is gonna be this side piece here like this. But what I'm gonna do instead, just to kind of get a foundation and make sure that I know I'm doing everything right, is I'm gonna mount plate 9 on like this. And then once I've got plate 9 tacked on, that'll let me know where plate 7 is supposed to sit exactly. So I'm gonna tack on plate 9, and then we're gonna move on to 7 and then 6 up here. All right, so now I can better see how plate 7 is supposed to sit and line up. I believe it's supposed to be about like right there. Okay, so now we got plate 9, plate 7, and plate 5 right here on the back. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and tack on plate 6, which is gonna sit here, and then plate 8 is going to go and then fill that gap right there. I'm gonna tack on plate 6 just because I wanna be able to get plate 8 in after to kind of maybe adjust any sort of up or down. So I'm gonna tack on this edge here, and then we will start on plate 8. All right, I'm gonna leave that one little tack on there just in case I need to move plate 6 in or out, which is something that they let you know. If you want, you can push plate 6 in more, or you can have it come out more. That's why all this stuff is super adjustable. So now I'm gonna take plate 8, and I'm gonna stick plate 8 up under here. I'm gonna use my level here, make sure it's not sticking in or out. All right, I'm happy with that. Now plate 6 looks pretty decent. Make sure that your plate 6 is not too close to your actual body, but make sure it's got enough room for your truck to be able to flex. All right, so I'm gonna get over here so I can adjust plate 6 a little more the way I want it. Make sure it's lined up and squared. I'm just ever so slightly pushing it out. And also just be careful where you put your tacks, because you don't want to put any tacks in any of these corners here when you have to put the next piece on, because it'll get in your way and you'll have to end up grinding it back down. Okay, it's now time to tack plates 10 and 11 into position. All right, so plate 11 is gonna sit on here this way, and then plate 10 is gonna sit up in this gap area here. I'm leaving plate 10 last because that way it'll give me space if I need to push up on top of plate 6 more. Okay, now we're gonna fit plate 10 on here. and plate 10 is gonna sit in there. And this is why I left 6 last. It's because I can push up on that if I need to. Now, like in the last video, you wanna leave kind of a corner, like a trough to weld in as well. Okay, so we're on the final pieces for this side. So next we're gonna do plate 13, and then 12 is gonna be down here at the bottom. It's totally user preference, whichever one you wanna do first. I'm just gonna line up this one here, leave a little bit of a corner, and I'm gonna go ahead and tack this thing together. All right, and then I'm gonna tack plate 12 on, and line the corner up down here. And then if there's a bit of a gap here, that's okay. You can just fill that in with a weld. And that just about pretty much completes this side. Very, very simple, very easy, not hard at all. And so now we're gonna work on the other side and go ahead and get that taken care of. We've now got everything tacked together. Now we need to take our number 14 plates. And the way that's gonna go is one number 14 plate is gonna go on the right side and one is gonna go on the left side. And they're gonna be bigger than this hook right here. So they're gonna sit on there just like that. And then you're gonna check your center hole, make sure that that is lined up correctly. And what you'll see is it'll leave a trough throughout the whole thing. This trough is what you're gonna put your weld in. If you've seen my front bumper video, it'll be just like that. But we're gonna do the same thing here on the back. All right, so it's tacked on there and that's not going anywhere. All right, so the bumper is completely tacked together. Now, the last thing we gotta do is just weld it up. Coastal Offroad recommends that you don't have to weld the inside of it if you don't want to. So I'm gonna start welding. Now, I'm doing this all by myself, and I know that as soon as I take this bumper off, there's no getting this thing back on. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to weld up as much as I can while it's sitting here. And the things that I can't get, I may end up having to take the bumper off. I do wanna weld up some of the inside just because. Now, also I wanted to mention, I've seen guys where they just build up an extra metal piece around here so that you don't have to use your plastic bumper for this if you don't want. Like I was saying, that's just one of the good things about these things being so customizable is you can do literally whatever you want with them. So all that's done. Now I'm gonna go ahead and weld this bumper up together. Once I finish this, we'll start working on the swing outs, but I wanna get all of this done and then cut the bumper to fit on, and then we'll start working on the swing outs after that. All right, so we've got the bumper completely ground down now. We've got everything welded up on it. So the rear bumper is pretty much completely done. So the next step is we're gonna get our plastic bumper and we're gonna put our plastic bumper on and get it to fit. We will have to cut it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna measure and cut it, and I'll show you guys how to go about doing that. If you did not opt for the swing outs, this is gonna be pretty much your last step. But if you did opt for the swing outs, we're gonna hit that next. So let's go ahead and get started with this plastic part. All right, so the way that you wanna go about getting measurements to cut your bumper is we're going to take measurements here, probably about in the middle and then along the edge as well. And then we're going to mark those same measurements onto our bumper and then we're gonna cut it. So I'm gonna get the measurements off of here. All right, so we're gonna copy our measurements from the bumper onto this bumper, and then we're gonna mark it where we need to cut. All right, so I've got my measurement here on the end, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna cut right here along this this light here along the top, because my measurement's probably like about a 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch onto this, but it's gonna look funky if I have any red showing. So I'm just gonna cut from here, put some tape over it to my line, and make that cut. All right, so all I've done is just flip the bumper upside down. So I'm gonna start making my cut along here and to here, and all this stuff up here is what's gonna have to go.
So now I'm gonna flip it back over again. All right, so this is the segment here that we're going to be using. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over and I'm gonna cut the inside of this bumper and save the pieces that I actually wanna use. Okay, so here's the inside of the bumper, but my cut's gonna come over like this, and I wanna use and save this stuff right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come straight with this line and I'm gonna come directly up. So I'm just gonna make a cut here, it's gonna come straight down, go over, and then the exact same thing on the other side. Sometimes this hot plastic will end up gluing itself back together. So we're gonna take this to the truck, see how it fits. If it does not fit up correctly, we'll pull it back off, trim some more, and then just keep doing that until it fits correctly. But hopefully it'll fit right the first time. All right, so we're just gonna take our plastic bumper and we're going to fit it up onto the old one and see how well it actually fits and sits on there. And there are mounting points up at the front that we took off in the beginning. Do not cut those off because those are an extremely important part with keeping the bumper on and secured. All right, so there's these little plastic tabs that keep the bumper actually together. I think that is what is keeping this bumper from going on completely. It's these pieces down here. So I think I might have to cut that off in order to get the bumper to fit on right. But these tabs right here, I think have to go just in order to make it sit on there correctly. As you can see here, the bottom part of this bumper here, this is gonna have to go. This is probably gonna be able to stay, but this stuff right here is gonna have to be cut along that bottom right there. I'm gonna line it up, and like, you don't have to leave these totally connected together. All right, so we've got the plastic bumper here. Once this is, you know, popped in correctly and lined up, so this is how this is gonna sit. And you can see we've got a little bit of a gap here. You want that gap, and it's not completely straight, but you're gonna want a gap there because your actual body is gonna be flexing, so you want a bit of a gap between the plastic and the actual bumper. But this is how it's gonna sit on here. So what I'm gonna do, there's a mounting point here for this plastic bumper, and then there's another one here. This clip that goes here actually broke when I was taking the bumper off. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to cut this little plastic tab off of this bottom one here, and then I'm gonna mount it on there so that way it lines up correctly. You don't have to have this plastic part on there if you don't want, but I do want it on there just to make it look kind of just like it did when it was stock. So I'm gonna line that up correctly, line this side up, cut that little tab off down there, and then we're gonna get the plastic on, and that will finish that segment of the bumper. All right, now I've got this right side piece on here. I'm going to fit this one up as well. Get this one lined up and clipped in. This is kind of a little bit of a larger gap, but it's kind of the gap that you want. So that's how that's gonna sit. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this plastic piece and put that middle plastic piece on there and screw that in. All right, so now we're working on a hitch. So you've got these two pieces here. So you've got, this is gonna be your bottom piece, and this is gonna be your top piece. So this piece right here is gonna sit directly on top of this piece here. So we're just gonna go ahead and tack this on. All right, so there's not a specific order on how you're supposed to put this together, but what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to go ahead and take these triangular pieces here, and there's one, this bottom part is a little shorter than this top part here. The taller part you want to be up against the back plate here. So I'm gonna go ahead and line this up with the front edge and tack it on. All right, those small tacks should be enough. Next, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this plate here, I'm gonna set it on, push it up against just like that. All right, so I've got it lined up straight. Now I'm gonna go ahead and tack this plate onto the main receiver. All right, so now that it's flipped over, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our other support pieces and we're gonna line them up. Make sure that it is behind where you put these bolts in, because you don't wanna put it in front, because you won't really gain access to your bolts. So you're gonna put it here. So I'm gonna go ahead and tack these on here. All right, so that is gonna be it as far as tacking our hitch together. So this is the way that it's gonna be. You're gonna have your two supports here, two supports at the bottom, and make sure that this top plate sits on top of this bottom plate here. So now we're gonna go ahead and weld all this together, and then our hitch will be finished. All right, so everything we've done so far, that's it for the rear bumper. Now we're gonna work on the swing outs. If you did just order the rear bumper and that's all you wanted, this is what you're gonna look like. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and get started working on the swing outs. All right, so it is now time to start working on the swing outs. So I've got all my pieces marked and laid out here. I've got all my pieces marked and laid out here. But with all that being said, now it is time to go ahead and assemble the swing outs. So what we're gonna do is we're first gonna assemble the tire carrier swing out, and then we're gonna do the jerry can holder swing out. Okay, so now it's time to start assembling our hinges. So we've got this bolt here, which is the H2 bolt. And so we're gonna put our washer on here like this. And then we're gonna slide this through just a little bit. So next we're gonna take 2 of these hinge things here. So basically the bolt's gonna go through here and through here like this. So I'm gonna slide this on here. Slide that on there like that. Just like this. So then we're gonna take another washer on the bottom, and then you wanna use the stainless steel nuts, not the black ones. Don't use the black ones for this. We're gonna use the stainless steel ones. We're gonna put that on here like this. All right, just like that. Then we're gonna do the same thing with the other hinge as well. All right, so now we've got both hinges assembled. All right, the next step that we're gonna do is when you are assembling these, you wanna take your H6 nuts here and you want to put them on to these. They're called the hem joints, the H4 hem joints. You wanna put them on there, and they want you to put them on all the way and then back them off 2 full turns. So I'm gonna put this on all the way and bottom it out, and then I'm gonna mark it here so I know where I'm at. I'm gonna back it off 2 full turns. Right there. And then you're just gonna do this with all 4 of them. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next step. So what we're gonna do is we are going to take plate S1 here, and we're going to mount it on to our hinge, just like this. Just like that. And then what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take 2 of our black nuts here, and we're gonna put these on here because we're going to end up welding these nuts onto plate S1. So I'm gonna put these on here. Just gonna tighten these up on here. Now, what they recommend is for you to put the plate in a vise. That way you can avoid any warping when you're welding these on here. Also, they don't want you to get any weld on the outside because another plate basically is going to be sitting on top of this. So if you have any welds like on the edges, like right here, it's going to interfere with it. So what I may do is I'm going to just put some really thick welds here, try to put some welds here, and then I may or may not leave the outside edge. I'm not sure. I'll look at it. But this, basically, these nuts and this plate is what is going to connect the swing out and stuff like that. So we are going to go ahead and weld this on here, and then once I get this welded on there, we're going to move on to the next step. All right, so we've got those welds on there. All you want to do is keep the welds off the very edges of this piece of metal here. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next step. So what we've got here is we've got our hinge that we previously welded the bolts onto, and then this is plate S2. So this is going to be our tire carrier swing out here. So what's recommended is that you basically disassemble the hinge and take off plate S1 so that you can set plate S1 on here and tack and weld it on. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to actually go ahead and just set it on here like this. And this is why I was saying you want to make sure that you don't have welds on the outside. So basically you would want this whole hinge piece off, but I'm going to leave it on, and I'm just going to eyeball it and make sure it's square. It's a little bit smaller than the whole width of piece S1, just because they have this trough, of course, for you to be able to weld into. So this lines up right, but we're gonna go ahead and tack this on right here since it's perfectly straight. And then we're gonna move on to plate S3. So I've got this piece tacked on here. So next, we're gonna work on plate S3. Okay, so we've got plate S3 here. This is S2, and this plate right here is S1. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna line this up on there just like that. Another thing they recommend before you do this step is if you have a bumper that doesn't have as much height as what they say in the instructions, you can actually drop this down. So you can put, instead of this bolt being in this hole, you can make this bolt be in there, and then you can just switch this and put this at the bottom like that if you wanted to. I won't have the issue with this bumper, so I'm just gonna set this up here like that, and I'm gonna go ahead and tack that in place. Okay, so next we've got plate S5, which is gonna be our end cap. So we're going to put our end piece on here, and again, these corners are just for you to be able to weld into. So I'm gonna tack this on here. Another thing that they say is to make sure that your welds on the bottom and the rear faces of the swing out are flush, because that's what you'll be clamping your rear swing out arm down. So you want this part to be flush and this part in the back to be flush as well. Okay, so now that the end cap is done, the next step is gonna be taking the swing arm and actually mounting it and welding onto the bumper. Before we do that, I'm gonna go ahead and actually weld up this whole swing arm. That way, I don't have to manage any of that while it's on the bumper. So I'm gonna weld all this stuff up, and then we're gonna go ahead and mount it onto the actual bumper. Okay, so this swing out is just about completely finished. We got everything welded up, and again, this is the one with the tire carrier. So we've got all our welds around the top and everything. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and get this swing out mounted onto the bumper. All right, so now it's time to mount the swing arm onto the actual bumper. What's recommended is we need a gap between our swing arm and the actual bumper here. So what they recommend is you either have a 1/4 inch gap, or you can use a piece of 3/16 inch thick metal, which they give in the kit. And you could just set them here and then here. So when we set our swing arm down, we're gonna set basically our swing arm onto this bumper here, and then we're gonna be able to take our plate 6, which is our hinge piece, and set it here and make sure everything is right. We're gonna tack it on. We're gonna open it up a little bit, measure it, and make sure everything's level. So if you want to get that gap, that's how you get it. You just take a piece of 3/16 inch thick metal, set it on there, and then we're gonna set our swing arm onto the actual bumper. So I'm gonna take this and set it up on here. And I'm gonna line up my S6 plate on the back just like that. All right, so I'm gonna line up my S6 plate the way that I need to, with a little bit of a gap on the right and a little bit of a gap on the left for me to be able to weld in. I'm gonna take my level here and make sure that the swing arm is right. That's actually perfect. All right, now what we're gonna do is we are going to lightly tack plate S6 onto the bumper. All right, now we're going to open it up. Make sure that it stays level. That's perfect still. Now we're gonna check this way. Make sure we're level this way. And that also is perfect. All right, so that is exactly how it's supposed to be. And so you can see it's not contacting the actual bottom of the bumper. We've got a little bit of a gap here at the bottom. All right, so using that 3/16 inch piece of metal actually works perfectly, because we have just enough space down in here to be able to clear without hitting. Also for the back here, I flattened down the weld back here, and also the weld up underneath of it, just so that when we hook up that catch pad, those welds don't interfere with anything. All right, so now that we've got this main tire carrier swing arm installed, what I'm actually gonna do is I'm not gonna finish this up just yet. I'm actually gonna start working on the one on the left side for the jerry can holders, just so I can make sure that I get this gap correctly while I don't have that side completely welded on yet. So we're gonna go ahead and work on the other side, We're gonna do basically the exact same thing with that, and then after that, we're gonna go ahead and come back to the swing arm and finish this tire carrier out. Okay, so once again, we've got our plate S15 here. This is our shorter one that our swing out is gonna go on. So we've also got our hinge here, once again, that we're gonna be using. Now, once again, do as I say, not as I do. They recommend that you take the hinge apart, but I'm just gonna set this on here like that. I got the last one on there pretty dead on, so I'm gonna do the same thing with this one. Just line that up, and then once this is lined up, I'm gonna go ahead and tack it on there. All right, so we've got this tacked on here. So plate S16 is gonna be this little piece here. We're gonna take this guy up and mount it right up onto the edge, just like that. And I'm gonna tack this on here as well. All right, so I've got my other S5 plate right here, and I'm going to tack this one on. Okay, so now that I've got this tacked on, I'm gonna weld this side. I'm gonna weld majority of this side as well. And then we'll go ahead and mount it onto the truck and make sure everything is level. All right, so now I've got my jerry can holder swing out. I'm gonna line it up with this. Give myself a little bit of a gap, and that's gonna be perfect. So something that's gonna be helpful for you guys to remember is absolutely do not completely weld in your tire carrier swing out. Just lightly tack it. And that's something that they say in the instructions, because something that I ran into is I actually tacked on the tire carrier swing out, and then the jerry can holder swing out. I went to fit it up, and it was way too far this way, and there wasn't any gap that way. So then I had to kind of recut those tacks and scoot that tire carrier over. So just keep that in mind. You do have two swing outs that you have to get on to fit equally on these side mounting points here. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure this is level, make sure the swing out is level, tack it on, and then we'll go ahead and start working on our tire carrier swing out. I'm gonna make sure that this side as well is level, and that's just about perfect as well. So now both of these swing outs close correctly. It may also be helpful to file down the welds in these areas as well, if you've got any welds sticking out. That way it'll just give you more space when you go to close these things. They don't end up contacting each other, and that's really what you want to look out for when you're building these things. All right, so we've got this swing out mounted on here. And that doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. All right, now we'll do the next one. All right, so we are making progress. So this is what our swing outs look like right now. So I went ahead and sanded the inside of them, just so that when you put them together, there's less chance of them contacting because of those welds. So these are all done. I've got my welds all on the sides. I welded the inside and the back as well. So all that's done. Now what we're gonna do is we are going to go ahead and install our catch pad. So it's gonna be this piece right here, which is S7, and it's gonna mount up here. So we'll go ahead and get that mounted on there. So what we're going to do is we're gonna take this piece here, which is S7. We're gonna set it up there. I'm gonna mark it center where I want it to be, just so that there's an even amount on each side, and then I'm gonna go ahead and open up these swing outs. That way we can go ahead and weld everything together. Now there's these two holes. These two holes are gonna face upward because that's what we're gonna screw our catch pad into. And you want to try to mount it as flush as possible with the top of the bumper. Okay, so we're gonna take our catch pad here, and we've got these screws here that they gave us to put into our catch pad, and we're gonna go ahead and screw this in onto the part S7. All right, so we've got a screw here and a screw here. Okay, so our catch pad is installed. Now there's a few things to look out for, which I'm gonna show you here. So we've got our two pieces here. Now you want your swing outs arms to stick out further than part S7 here. And as you can see, they do stick out just a little bit further. This is super crucial because if your swing arms don't stick out further like this, then the actual S7 part, when you lock your latches, they won't secure properly. And so that's a huge thing as far as safety. So make sure that this part sticks out further. If it does not, you can always take a piece of metal, put it behind here and tack it back on, and that will give you sufficient space. The next thing is, you'll notice the catch pad here. For some vehicles, when you put the hatch down, you'll notice that it hits on that catch pad. It's okay to cut the catch pad a little bit. You can cut it as low as 3/8 inch tall. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna mark where it's catching at, and I'm just gonna kind of take my cutoff wheel, I'm gonna cut it, and that way I don't have to worry about the tailgate not closing or contacting that catch pad. Okay, so next what we're gonna do is we're going to install our latches. Now, they give you these latches to install onto the truck. So there's the catch here, and it'll hook on to the latch like that. Now, they recommend for you to weld it on there unless your bumper is aluminum. If your bumper is aluminum, it's not recommended that you actually weld it on there, but if it's steel, it's recommended that you weld it. If you don't want to weld it on there, you can just drill holes and bolt it on there as well. So we're gonna go ahead and get this thing welded on, as well as the catch welded on there as well. So now I'm gonna mark where I want these things at, and mark the bottom as well. All right. So now that I've got those marked, what I'm gonna actually do is I'm going to take off this plastic pad that we just put on there, because that thing's gonna melt if I weld anywhere near it. I'm gonna take that off, and then I'm gonna go ahead and weld these on, weld on the plate here, S7, get that welded on there, and then I'm gonna go ahead and move on to the next step. All right, so now that I've got all this stuff tacked on here, I'm gonna go ahead and take off the plastic piece and then weld all this stuff on. Okay, so we've got our latches installed, and now it's time for the part that I've been waiting for this whole entire time, which is building the tire carrier part for the swing out. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna start with part S8 and then build our diagonal part on there and go from there. So we're gonna go ahead and get started working on that. All right, so when we're building this thing out, we're gonna start with the S8 piece. So your S8 piece is gonna sit exactly like this. Now they recommend for you to sit it at least 16 inches away from this side of the vehicle, so that your tire doesn't block your tail light. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna take my diagonal piece here, and I'm gonna line it up with about right there with the edge. And so about right here is where I want my S8 plate to be, because I want this to be as close to that edge as possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and tack in S8. So next is our S9 plate. So our S9 plate, there's gonna be like an angle like this. You want it looking exactly like this with that angle sloping, I'm gonna say sloping downwards, because what's gonna happen is when our tire sits on it, it's gonna angle our tire this way up against the vehicle, because if you have it upside down, then your tire's gonna be angling this way off the vehicle, and you don't want that. So we're gonna have it with our slope going down that way. All right, so I'm gonna set S8 up on here. All right, now we're gonna weld the support arm in place. All right, now we're gonna mount S10. S10 is gonna be our support directly up under here. Now we can mount S11, and S11 is gonna sit on here just like this. Okay, now they do give us these plates as S13. You can actually mount them onto the side like this, and you can actually put a high lift jack on it. Now I have to go out and buy a high lift jack, so I'll end up doing that, and then I'll figure out where I want to mount it. You can mount it onto here, or you can mount it onto where you want the jerry can holders to be. You can mount on there as well. You can even mount them on the side. Like, you can literally put them anywhere you want. So I'm gonna kind of fool around after I buy one, and then figure out where I want to put it. All right, so they give us 3 bolts to be able to mount our tire onto. So I'm gonna go ahead and weld these on there as well. All right, and that is it pretty much for our tire carrier swing out. I'm gonna come back and weld the S13 plates on when I figure out how I want to mount it. But now for this side, I'm gonna go ahead and finish the welds on all of this stuff, and then we're gonna move on to the jerry can holder.
Okay, so now it's time to work on the last step of the tire carrier swing out. Coastal Offroad gives a T-spring. It's like a pin. So what we'll do is we're gonna end up welding this onto the truck, and that way, whenever you shut the door, it'll act as a secondary locking mechanism. Okay, so we've got our S14 plates here. I'm just gonna stack these on top of each other, just like we do the holes for the D-rings. We're just gonna weld this in here just like this. So a spring pin goes in there. So we just took the spring pin out. I'm gonna weld that in there just like that. And then we are going to fit it up to the tire carrier. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we are going to close our swing out here, and we're gonna latch it down all the way. And we're gonna mark where we want our pin to be. So I'm gonna take this marker here, I'm gonna figure out where I want it, and then we're going to mark the hole where the tip of the pin is, because we're gonna drill that out. So I'm gonna mark this, and then I'm just gonna double check it. All right, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and drill that hole out. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna drill this hole out to a 3/8. Now our pin sits in there perfectly. Okay, so we're gonna put our swing arm back in the locked position and close it shut. And then we're gonna put a washer over the hole and then set this down on it just to make sure that it's welded at the correct height, is what the instructions say. So I'm gonna set it here, and then I'm gonna go ahead and tack this onto the bumper. So when we wanna close the bumper, we'll grab this latch, let it go, and then lock the bumper in place. And so now this thing is not going anywhere at all. It doesn't have any chance of coming open, and that's all set. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and just fully weld this thing on, and that'll be it for that. Okay, so I've got my S17 plates here, and literally all I did with them is I just put a tack here and a tack here, so I just set it up there. So we're just gonna tack these in place, and all I'm doing here is I'm sticking my jerry can holder bracket on just to make sure that I have everything squared, because I don't want to get this thing completely welded up together and then it not fit on there correctly. So all I'm doing is I'm just sticking those bolts in there just to hold it and make sure that it's square the way that I need it. All right. So now I'm gonna go ahead and take this jerry can holder off. I'm gonna set that down, and I'm gonna go ahead and finish these welds here. All right, so it's the next day and we're working on the jerry can holders now. Let me first say that when you're putting together your jerry can holders, you wanna already have the jerry cans that you're gonna be using, because you're gonna be kind of using that to fit it up. So we've got our pieces here. So the first step is we're gonna take plate S20 through S23, which is this one, and this one here. And we're gonna tack these together to make sure that they fit. Now, when you're putting these things together, you're gonna have your biggest piece is gonna have the 3 holes at the top of it. That is gonna be the top of your piece. And then S21 here is gonna be on the bottom. And then S23 here, it's gonna have, again, 2 holes in it. These are where your strap is gonna go into. Those holes are gonna be facing upwards at the top. So it's gonna be like this. So we're gonna go ahead and tack this together, and then we're gonna fit our jerry cans in. Okay, so we're gonna take plate S20 and set it on top of 21, just like that. And then we're gonna make sure that it's square. Okay, that feels perfect. So I'm gonna tack this in, and then we're gonna work on 23. And once again, the holes are gonna be facing upwards. All right, now what they want you to do is just test up your gas cans to make sure that they fit correctly before you continue on with the next steps. So that works. It fits
pretty darn good. Okay, so we've got our gas can straps here. So all we're gonna do in this step is we're going to weld our plate S26. We've got 2 of the S26 plates onto S24 and S25. So all we're doing right now is we're just welding these straps on, because these S26 plates is what's gonna hold our gas cans down. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and tack this in place. All right, and something to keep in mind is you want these gas can straps to be on the inside. So when you're working on S25 here, you're gonna want your hole on the top left, and you're gonna weld S26 on. And then once you put it on your jerry can holder and you get it completed, it's gonna be on the inside, and your strap will be on there just like that. So now we've got our gas can straps completed. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna install our hinge onto plate S24, and then we're gonna install our locking latch onto plate S25. And then when we did the plate, I believe it was S23, that was actually connected to the jerry can holders, we're gonna hook up this latch on there as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and screw this stuff in, and then we'll work on the other stuff. All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and install this hinge here. The hinge is gonna be on the inside of the jerry can holder. Okay, so now that I've got this hinge installed on there, we're gonna fit our jerry cans in there one more time. So now for the straps, what we're gonna do is we're gonna make sure our straps fit correctly and make sure that this thing latches up right. So when you do this, you wanna make sure that your latch is not in the open position, because it's gonna be taller if it's in the open position. You wanna make sure it's locked and in the closed position. So now I've got it lined up. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go ahead and weld them together. And I've just got a piece of cardboard here just because I don't wanna get any splatter on my jerry cans. All right, so now that we've got everything fitted up, we're gonna take our S22 plates, and our S22 plates are gonna sit on the jerry can holder just like this. So they're gonna go up against the outside. They're not gonna fit in between it. They're gonna go up against the outside and hold it in place. All right, so our jerry can holder is tacked completely together and in place. So I'm just gonna test fit these one more time before I completely weld everything together. Everything locks down in there good. All right, so that locks in place. And you can put a pin through this, this latch here as well if you wanted to. So now that all this is done, I'm gonna go ahead and weld the whole thing completely together, and then we're gonna get it mounted onto the truck. All right, so I'm gonna install the jerry can holder on here just to show you guys how to go about doing that. We're gonna take our jerry can holder right here, and they include these bolts that you need to be able to mount them on. We're just gonna slide this bolt in here. And they give you washers too. I'm just not putting those in right now just because the whole thing's about to come off and get powder coated anyway. Just gonna put these nuts on. All right, and then your jerry can holder will basically sit on here like this. And then the latch comes down, locks them in place. Okay, so everything else is done. The last thing we have to do is install the mounts for the high lift jacks if you guys want a high lift jack. I've been looking around through the truck and I put the tire and everything like that on it. And I think the best place for me is gonna be right here for the high lift jack. For the jack to stand up like this, I want it on this side. I think I figured out that if I put it here, I might be able to mount it in a way where there's enough space when I fully open the swing out so that it doesn't hit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna tack it on here, onto the side. I'm gonna test it, see how it fits. If it doesn't work, I'll break the tacks off and we'll just go from there. Okay, so I've got my first piece tacked on where I want my high lift jack at. So looking at it, I can get it mounted here about like that, but I need another mounting point at the top because I don't have any space to mount it at the bottom. So Coastal Offroad sent 2 of these plates here. So what I opted for is I took another piece of square tubing that I had, and so I'm gonna set this here, and then that's what I'm gonna be able to build off my second mount for my high lift jack. If I could get it there, that would be absolutely perfect. Actually, I may mount it like this, take a piece of spare metal and put it in the back or something. I'm not really sure, I'll figure it out, but that's one of the good things about, again, these bumpers being just so customizable. You can do literally anything you want to them. So I'm gonna try to figure out some more of how I wanna do this, and then hopefully we can get this high lift jack mounted. Okay, so I've got my mounts on for my high lift jack. These welds I made pretty thick, I'm not gonna lie, because I don't want that high lift jack falling off and hitting somebody while I'm driving. So that is where my high lift jack is gonna mount. So it'll be a high lift, jerry cans, and tire. Okay, and the last super important thing is you want to make sure that when you lock your latches, that your swing arm sucks down onto the catch pad. This is super important. You want to make sure that it locks down just like this, okay? Because if you don't, then it's not going to be on there stable enough and your swing arm could move on you when you're driving. You can adjust it with these bolts here. You can adjust these and make them looser or tighter, and that's a way to do it. Or you can adjust your actual latches and tighten those up and make those looser or tighter, but you just need that to suck down on there, or else it's not going to be sturdy enough while you're driving to keep the swing arms from actually moving.
All right guys, so as you can see, the bumper is finally complete. I got it powder coated and everything. I am super ecstatic with how this bumper turned out. It turned out amazing. This bumper is super robust and sturdy, but with that being said, it's not as heavy as you think it might be. I had the swing arms off, but I was actually able to pick up this whole bottom part and put it into my truck when I was taking it to get it powder coated, which I was actually pretty surprised. So if you have any concerns about it being a super heavy bumper, I wouldn't worry too much about that. So my favorite part that I was super excited about is being able to get this high lift jack mounted on the way I did. I saw it in my head the way that I wanted to mount it on, and the fact that I was actually able to do it with the customizability of this bumper was super exciting. The bumper as well has about 12 mounting points that mount into the frames. That just ensures that the bumper is sturdy, and it's kind of overkill, but it just makes sure that your bumper will not come off under any circumstances and under any stress. This bumper fixes a lot of my problems that I had with rubbing issues, with the amount of clearance that it offers around the tires and up actually behind the truck underneath. It sits really, really high up and fits the body perfectly. It sits really close up against the body as well, so that it doesn't stick out too far behind you. And the way that it sits up against the tailgate, there's perfect spacing back there. And the way that the bumper is built, none of the objects on the bumper block your tail lights. I have really large tires. I have 295s. I'm gonna be running up to 35s, and none of that gets in the way of the tail lights. The high lift jack doesn't get in the way of the tail lights. So they did really good making sure that everything is in the center as well, and making sure that nothing's covering up the tail lights. The hinges that the swing arms mount to are extremely sturdy. They're really thick metal that you weld onto the bumper. These hinges are not going anywhere, they're super thick. The D-rings as well, you take 2 pieces of 3/8 inch thick metal and you weld them together and then weld that onto the truck also. So that's not going anywhere either. And I as well have the hitch. I just don't have it mounted onto the truck right now just because I don't need it on for the time being. These hitches are not tow rated. This is something that is important that you guys need to know. They're not tow rated because Coastal Offroad is not responsible for another person's welding job. It really just depends on the sturdiness of the weld that is gonna rate the amount that the actual hitch can carry. If you're not comfortable welding your own hitch, you can take it to a fab shop and they'll weld it up. I welded this hitch in less than 5 minutes. It's super simple, super easy, and it's really, really sturdy. So something else that I also want to touch on, when you're building your bumper out, you want to make sure that your swing out arms are leveled correctly. Now in the instructions, what they want you to do is take the bolts that are on the side and they want you to screw them onto those like swivel hinges. You screw them on all the way and then you unscrew them 2 turns. And when you do that, it levels it out absolutely perfectly. I did that and I haven't had to fool with anything. So you can adjust them that way. Also, you can adjust your actual latches and you can tighten them up, but you just want to make sure that when you close your swing out and you lock it down, that swing out closes onto that catch pad, because if it doesn't, if it sits up, it's going to move back and forth. So you want it to basically suck down and lock onto that catch pad. And while we're on the topic of latches, the latch system is really easy to work with. It's a 2-stage system. You just squeeze it and open it up, and with the tire swing out, there's a locking pin. That locking pin actually saved me yesterday. I ended up closing my swing outs, forgot to close the latch, but that locking pin stayed in place and kept the swing arm from opening up while I was driving. Another thing that I like is that these swing out arms open up really, really wide as well. And I was able to secure everything to my bumper so that nobody could steal it. I was able to secure my tire onto the swing arm by putting like a bike lock on it and roping that through. Also the same thing with the jerry can holders as well. The instructions when I was building this bumper were really good, really self-explanatory. And also, hopefully this video helps you guys out when you guys are looking to build out your bumpers so that you can see exactly what you're getting into. So with all that being said, I'm super excited about how this bumper looks. I wanted a bumper like this before I even bought my 4Runner, and I'm just super happy with the way that it turned out. If you guys are looking to pick up some off-road equipment from Coastal Offroad, definitely go check out their website, and I'll link all their information down below. And a huge shout out to them for sponsoring me. They're a great company to work with. They make a lot of good off-road armor. My truck is pretty much gonna be totally armored up with Coastal Offroad armor, with the rear bumper, the front bumper. If you haven't seen that video, is Coastal Offroad, and I'm getting sliders from them as well. So pretty much all of my armor on this truck is gonna be Coastal. I'll link my Instagram down below so that you guys can keep up with what's going on with the rig before I actually post stuff on YouTube. And don't forget to use the discount code ALPHA7 at checkout to save a little bit of change when you're buying these bumpers. All right guys, so that pretty much sums up the rear bumper build. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this video will help you when you're looking to build your rear bumper, and I will catch you in the next video.